This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
The new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't undo your last hire. The human postponer. They were the master of one phrase. I'll circle back on that. But 3 months later, you are the one doing all their work and wondering how big that circle is. But LinkedIn Hiring Pro can take the hiring load off your plate by automating the hiring busy work from the initial job post to scheduling interviews. Hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
Welcome back to I Want That Too, the podcast where Disney merch meets Disney history. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and as always, I'm joined by the lovely Lauren Hersey. Quick question, though, Lauren. How's the weather down there in West Virginia right now?
I'd say hot and dreary. If I'm looking out my window, how about you?
Same thing here. It is 88 degrees. Humid doesn't even begin to describe it. And as I was explaining to Lauren as we were pre-gaming this week's show, I am a complete moron because I decided this is the perfect weather to bake in, and literally a pie, not as in sitting outside and sweating to
Getting
death.
a suntan?
Yeah. So, and speaking of which, I got to get the lawn mowed before we head to California. And speaking of which, that's the other thing. We are recording this show, relatively early because when this thing airs, you and I will be in Anaheim, right, at this year's D23 Expo.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be like hot, sunny California vibes out there and not so dreary and humid. However, I was talking with somebody at the CW and she was saying that last week it was incredibly humid in California, which is odd, right?
Well, no. In fact, a quick story here. I want to say it was it had to have been the 2015 D23 Expo, because that's when they were celebrating the 20th anniversary of Toy Story. And how they did that is they brought out to California and, in fact, inflated right there in front of the Anaheim Convention Center the Buzz Lightyear balloon. And the folks at Macy's Parade Studio were nice enough to let me stay up all night with them as they inflated the Buzz Lightyear balloon. In fact, it had to be ready. Dear Lord, when? All right, let me work the math here. Okay, it had to be ready by 8 o'clock East Coast time, so that it had to be fully inflated by 5 a.m. so that John Lasseter could stand in front of this thing and talk live with the hosts of Good Morning America back in New York. And so, they're inflating the thing all night. And what the folks, to bring this sort of full circle to, hot and humid out in California, the guys from the Macy's Parade Studio were very, very worried about the fact that given how hot it had been the previous day, the notion was they were actually underinflating the helium. They put just enough into it to actually allow Buzz to float, but not fully inflated, because what was going to happen was when the sun came up and the heat came up, the helium was going to expand. And the worry was if we put too much helium into Buzz, he'll blow a seam, and he'll crash back down to Earth. So hot and humid this time of year out in Anaheim, not a surprise. Actually, experienced it way too many times coming and going from the Anaheim Convention Center.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed that nothing like that, goes on this time around. But what we're going to do on this show today. It's a little.
I don't want to blow a seam.
Don't blow a seam is what I'm saying. No blowing seams for Jim or Bus. But so what we're doing here today, though, Jim, is a little different than our typical format for the podcast. So we're just going to say, if, maybe you're not getting to go out to California and experience this for yourself. I know you just did a marathon Patreon exclusive episode with Len and Jim about kind of predictions,
Lord, yes.
like what they think is going to come out of D23. Is that right?
I'm not sure when that goes up, but hopefully by now.
Yeah. So, but what we're doing is we just kind of want to take you along with us on what to expect. So they are bound and determined to make this like long weekend into a giant celebration, into an experience. So there's lots of moving parts because they know that they're going to have a lot of outsiders in town. So they're really trying to make it special. So we're going to talk about what's going on in the parks, some what I think is unusual merch coming to the parks and the expo, and then what things that we're excited to see come out of the parks panel and Imagineering. But before we get into all of that, why don't we go ahead and thank our sponsor?
Absolutely, which of course is Be Our Guest Vacations. And if you're planning a Disney vacation, it can get complicated in a hurry. That's where our friends at Be Our Guest Vacations come in. They are a platinum-level earmarked travel agency whose experienced team can help you plan, well, your Disney vacation, your Universal vacation, a cruise, or just your next big adventure without the stress of handling every single detail yourself. So learn more and start planning at beourguestvacations.com. So, all right, we now pivot back to the main focus of this week's show, which is the D23 Expo. And this is, of course, this is something that the official Disney fan club holds every 2 years. It started out in 2009, just at the Anaheim Convention Center. And I want to say it's 2024 that it effectively expanded over to the Honda Center as well, right?
Yep, that is what's going on. And that was our first D23 Ultimate Fan Expo. And so this year, like in 2024, they're jam-packing those days. But the official, I would say, kind of kickoff is Thursday at the theme parks for D23 Day. And they have stuff going on in both parks, which we're going to get to in a second. But so you and we're getting into California on Wednesday. And Eric and I are going to go up to Hollywood, I think, when we get in and try to do like a double-decker bus tour, get a lay of the land. Because when we were out in March, our kids were like, absolutely not for them. But then on Thursday, we'll be doing the parks all day for the big celebration. Okay. Which, by the way, if the previous D23 Day at Disneyland is any indication, you should anticipate at some point there will be a parade down Main Street, USA, where you will get to see a lot of the former Disney legends. Yeah. Folks like Imagineer Tony Baxter or Susan Egan, the voice of Meg from Hercules, or by the way, same woman who played Belle on Broadway in the stage version of Beauty and the Beast. So, but that's also going on. At California Adventure in Downtown Disney as well, right? Yeah. So looking at the cavalcade, because I think a lot of people will be in the park for that. And I do want to try to catch it this time. In 2024, when we were there, I think we maybe arrived a little too late and we were just getting acclimated to like what was going on around us. So this time we're going to try to hit up all of the special things that are going on. I think think that is one of the biggest. So that's happening at 1:30, and they're just calling it a cavalcade. And so I looked back at who was in attendance or who was on the float in 2024, and I'm wondering who you think, Jim, will be on the float in 2026. I have a feeling that Susan Egan that you mentioned, that she'll be on the float because we got our D23 panel reservations, and Angela, your friend, who's going to be in our kind of crew, she sent us yours and I shared ours. And one of us got like the Disney Legends conversation, and she was going to be a part of that. So I'm assuming that like they'll put her on the float, right?
I'm hoping so. And to be honest, because I have been a fan of this man's work forever, as far back as the Raggedy Ann animated feature. I'm really hoping that Eric Goldberg gets to be part of the cavalcade. By the way, if you went out and saw the live-action Moana last month, just like he did for Moana, the actual animated feature, he's the one who did the animation of Minnie Maui, the tattoo.
I did not know that, but he's famous for the genie. Like, that's his claim to fame, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been fortunate enough to interview Eric and his lovely wife Susan previously. They're both really sweet people, and I'm thrilled that Eric is finally getting this sort of recognition from the Disney company, because he's done great work for years and years. I mean, again, he was the co-director of Pocahontas. He created Phil for Hercules. Huge talent. Glad he's getting that oversized trophy. I don't know where he's going to put it. Have you ever seen a Disney Legends trophy up close?
No, Jim. We're normal people around here. Have you?
I have. They are. They're like 2 feet wide, almost 3 feet tall, and it's like they don't fit on anybody's mantle. I mean, you got to go out and get an actual separate table at your house to set the thing up.
Well, get that man a table, and then I think maybe we'll see Kim Irvine, which she's listed as an Imagineer. Do you know Kim? She's going to be in the Legend panel, so I'm just making the assumption that we're going to see these people on the float.
Okay. And by the way, Kim, what is it, 55 years at Walt Disney Imagineering, only just recently retired as sort of the patron saint of Disneyland Park. She was the Imagineer with boots on the ground who, made sure that park stayed lovely. So, it's actually kind of sweet that Kim could be part of the cavalcade this year. Though I would imagine from her seat on the bus, she'll be like, we need to paint that building.
So I'm really, really hoping, because I feel like the ones we just mentioned, they're logical choices. I would love to see Lin-Manuel Miranda. He is my personal favorite. I don't know if he's going to show up at the expo at all, but that's who I'd be hoping for.
Doesn't Lin have a new show in development for Broadway?
You said that, but didn't you say he's being kind of quiet about it?
Well, okay. I forget I said anything. Okay. Never mind. All right.
Well, anyways, hopefully he will be there. But that's 1:30. But there's lots of other things going on that day. And this is a merch show. So what I plan on doing is rope dropping it per usual for us. And they're giving away special D23 day ears, like the hat, with the ears, with the logo on it. So I'm hoping to snag one of those this year. We did not get lucky enough to get one the last time. And then I think there's going to be some kind of like commemorative, like a map or a guidebook or something like that. So I will definitely try to grab those when we get in the door.
Okay. Well, more power to you. Just, I'm just as a word of caution to you and Eric and anyone else who's planning on taking part in D23 Day at the Disneyland Resort, just putting it out there that you are up against professional Disney fans. These are the people who are going to get there early, and more to the point, if they can, they're only supposed to take one map and one ear, and, it's always interesting to watch the people who are walking down the street with 5 ears and 5 maps, and it's like, all right, how did you pull that off?
My moral compass is far too strong.
Well, there you go. There we go. But no, you're just saying, folks, you're up against the professionals. They're going to get there at the butt crack of dawn. They're going to be the first in line. They're going to somehow get multiples of everything, and they're going to be, more to the point, they're going to be first in line for the merch in the park. And do we know anything about the D23 merch that's going to be in the park, or?
Yeah, so remember me mentioning several times leading up to this that Disney now understands that, we talked last week about how consumer products is moving under entertainment and things go far beyond the ticket. And so we're seeing a lot more merch as a part of the expo. But they also leveled up in a big way the merch at D23 Day. So you're going to have your typical D23 day stuff, but they're also rolling out some collabs as a part of the experience. So this first one that you're looking at, they're calling it Disneylandia, and is that right? Disneylandia? Is that a thing?
What's interesting about Disneylandia, that name, boy, that predates Disneyland, the park. In fact, if you've ever done the Walt Disney Presents walkthrough at Disney's Hollywood Studios, and about midway through that exhibit, you come across a miniature of Granny Kincaid's cabin that Walt had built. I mean, and this is late 40s. This is an idea he's floating, that, Walt wants to create this series of miniatures that he will send across the country. This was the first one completed. And in fact, I want to say the actress, I know her first name was Ruth. I'm just blanking her last name at the moment. But the woman who played Granny Kincaid in Disney's live-action animated film So Dear to My Heart, they literally brought her back to the studio to record a narration. So as you're standing there in front of this miniature, it's like Granny Kincaid would walk you through, what was in her cabin. And it was one of these things where you have to understand that the folks at Disney Studio are like, Walt, it's a miniature. It's like, okay, so you're going to send a bunch of miniatures out, and it's going to travel the country. It's like, how exactly is this going to make money? More to the point, it's a miniature. One person can stand in front of it, and, Granny Kincaid is saying, here's my preserves, and here's my rocking chair. And it's like, how is this going to get any capacity? It was one of these, Walt had ideas that sometimes didn't make much sense, which, by the way, is the exact same thing people said about you want to take the orange grove and those walnuts and turn it into a family fun park. That doesn't make sense either. So sometimes the ideas worked out.
They had some winners in there.
But again, Disneylandia was what he was going to call this traveling exhibit. So I love that this name, from the 1940s of a thing that Walt never did, is bubbled up again.
Yeah, this is a little different than I think his original vision. So the collab is with Southern California lifestyle brand Viva La Bonita. And the collection is more streetwear. It looks like the one gentleman is wearing what appears to look more like a hockey jersey with the Disneylandia and
I was about to say, hand that man a hockey stick.
Yeah, so there's that. Okay. And then we're getting the Hunchback of Notre Dame, the 30th anniversary, and it looks like for that one, we're getting a pin, a spirit jersey, headband, accessories, mug. There's a line of collectibles, but I think that the pin will probably be maybe what people are waiting in line for. And I bet we see see a lot more 30th anniversary merch at the expo. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I kind of love that Hunchback is getting this sort of attention. By the way, Michael Eisner's favorite animated film of all the ones that were made during his tenure at Disney Studios. In fact, we came so close to getting a TV movie version of Hunchback on ABC. It was one of those things that they were inches away from greenlighting. And in fact, I want to say friend of the show, Josh Gad, might have been even considered for the lead role. But anyway, so no, I'll have to keep an eye out for those.
I know, and I feel like I need to go back and revisit that film. It's been a long time, I feel like, since I've seen it. I remember it being very emotional and impactful, but it's been years since I've seen it.
Yeah, and not to put too fine a point on it, but I love the score, love the film, but I'm in a very small group of people who actually love the Gargoyles. Victor, Hugo, and Laverne. In fact, when they did it as a stage show, they started in Germany. Eventually, the Gargoyles, the cute little cuddly gargoyles, and their song "A Guy Like You" went away because this is a serious story, not with a bunch of goofy gargoyles.
Well, if I want you on my trivia team, if someone ever asks what were the name of the gargoyles from Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Well, and further, pointless trivia here. The reason she's called the third gargoyle is called Laverne is because the Andrews sisters had three sisters, and there was Patty, Maxine, and Laverne. So that's why the third gargoyle is Laverne.
Well, I love it. Put that in your memory bank for next time we're doing Disney trivia.
There we go.
But anywho, continuing on with what we're going to see here, I'm happy to see that Alice in Wonderland is now getting some 75th anniversary merch months later after the actual anniversary, I believe. And so again, I think that we will see more of that inside the expo, maybe the marketplace. But this particular line is focused a little bit like the Croquet Club, and you're seeing the ears and some tops buttoned down, a really cute purse. So there was that. And then this is what I wanted to have you look at, Jim. What do you think about these commemorative medallions that are going to be available for purchase?
Well,
I'm like, is this a thing that's going to be a hot commodity?
The interesting thing here, and I'm going to make a prediction here because, okay, I mean this in the kindest possible way. A 25th anniversary of California Adventure. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, that's legit. Likewise, and all of these are front facing with D23 Day at Disneyland. Lauren, I'm just going to say up front, the one I think is going to be the one that collectors crave and it's going to go fastest is the Trader Sam's one.
That's what I was going to say, too.
Yeah. Because the tiki collectors, and I mean this in the kindest possible way because my brother-in-law is a tiki collector, but they're crazy. They are, just they're completists. And the notion that, here's a coin for the 15th anniversary of Trader Sam's at the Disneyland Hotel. They're going to go after this thing hammer and tongs. And I'm sure the other ones, will end up in the fans of, the individual parks. But that one, if you're a tiki collector, be aware. It's out there and move quickly or more to the point, expect to pay big bucks for it on eBay.
Yes. Okay, final thing. Do you think that this Hatbox Ghost popcorn bucket, that you're going to see a lot of these on eBay now that they are limiting 2 per person, 2 per transaction?
I'm sorry. It's authentic. It's on model. But that thing's creepy.
Where's the popcorn go?
More to the point, why would you eat out of that? I mean, look, I know Haunted Mansion fans, ever since the Hatbox Ghost came back to Anaheim after, only having been in the attraction during its early pre-game phase. But wow, that's ugly. I'm sorry.
And no idea where the popcorn goes. It looks more like a purse, it does have a strap, but the hat box. Obviously, it's in a hat box.
No.
But the head looks kind of small in the box. So,
well, remember, with each beat of his heart, the face disappears from the top of his head in the hat box, and so it's authentic. I mean, it looks great, but again, I don't know where I would display this in the house. And we've had this conversation before about where does one display popcorn buckets, or how does one display popcorn buckets. And I just can't see putting that thing next to my Happy Figment. Poor little dragon would have to go into therapy.
Yeah, so that is the majority of what we're seeing for the D23 day as far as merch goes. There's also going to be the Princess concert event that's happening over at California Adventure, and that's what is going to kick off International Princess Week, which goes from the 16th to the 22nd. And just a reminder, they do all of the original voices of the princesses, so it's going to be a jam-packed day.
Before we totally put D23 Day at the Disneyland Resort in the rearview mirror, I do want to talk about one thing that's going to go on in Fantasyland during the day that, again, you diehard Disney fans are probably going to want to take advantage of. But in Fantasyland, just over the course of the day, two really rare characters are going to make appearances there. It's Merlin the Magician and then the Blue Fairy from Pinocchio. So if you want an extra cool photo of a rare Disney character up close, make sure you circle back through Fantasyland a few times over the course. And that's Thursday, right?
That is Thursday. And I'm happy that the Blue Fairy is getting some love, too. I mean, she's the main event of the Disney Starlight Parade at Disney World. And so it makes good timing, good sense.
On the other hand, my pal, the late, great Disney historian Jim Korkus, one of the very first jobs he had at the Disney company was playing Merlin the Magician at Disneyland. In fact, he used to preside over the Sword and the Stone ceremony there. And, I always think of Jim when I see Merlin out and about. Anyway.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
The new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't undo your last hire. The human postponer. They were the master of one phrase. I'll circle back on that. But 3 months later, you were the one doing all their work and wondering how big that circle is. But LinkedIn Hiring Pro can take the hiring load off your plate by automating the hiring busy work from the initial job post to scheduling interviews. Hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
Tomorrow morning is knocking. Stock your fridge now. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or a sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries. So
now, back to cool stuff we'll get to see at the D23 Expo. And this one, this is a throwback to the 70s, the 80s, am I right?
I had to just pull wanted to ask, Jim, because it has been on my mind for weeks since they came out with the map of the show floor. And it's Atari. Atari is going to have a space at the expo.
I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that. Is this going to be legitimate 8-bit, graphics? I mean, what is this?
Yeah, I'm like, is Atari making a comeback? Because this is how they describe it online. They say guests will be able to play 2 upcoming Toy Story releases that combine classic Disney games with updated features for modern systems. Atari will offer playable demos of Toy Story Retro Roundup and Toy Story 3, the complete edition. So I'm not familiar with Atari making a comeback.
What's the old joke? How can I miss you if you won't go away? Did Atari go away? By the way, though, I will say this much. If what Lauren has here in her show notes is true, the notion that the Atari booth, will feature an exclusive D23 pin, they came to play, Lauren. Again, you're here with the professional collectors and the notion of, there's an Atari exclusive D23 pin. I'm going to that booth.
I feel like people are going to love that because, if you look around, there's definitely people in this demographic that grew up with playing Atari.
Totally.
And so, but they're tying it to this modern franchise of Toy Story that just had a gangbusters, movie. And so they're kind of keeping a little bit of it hush-hush. But this is the other thing that we know. It says the collection preserves 11 console and handheld versions of Disney and Pixar games from the 1990s and early 2000s.
Wow.
So it had Toy Story, Toy Story 2, Buzz Lightyear Star Command, Toy Story Racer, and A Bug's Life. And so I'm still very, very confused that I thought Atari went away. What are we talking about, the 90s and 2000s, unless they were released on, obviously, different systems?
I do not know what to tell you. I have made no bones on this podcast about the fact that I have no hand-eye coordination. I tried to do asteroids. Pong, I never succeeded at. And in fact, I pretty much put gaming in the rearview mirror based on those 2 failures. So, that's 60 plus years of entertainment I opted out of. And, that's completely to my own personal chagrin, Lauren, because correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it a well-known stat that, and think about it, we just have had, Spider-Man, Brand New Day, effectively make $1 billion after, 3 days, 4 days at the box office? But, anybody who works in entertainment will tell you, Hollywood makes a lot of money, off of the sales of tickets to films, but it's only 1/10 of the money that gaming makes. So, this is a smart play, doing, though I'm just kind of intrigued by the most, this is an updated version of Toy Story 3, the movie that came out in 2010, 16 years ago.
No idea. Yeah. But it says that players can play as the Emperor Zurg. The games are being developed by Digital Eclipse and published by Atari, and they are scheduled for release on October 15th. So we'll see. We'll keep you updated on Atari.
Okay.
And if you are, in this space and more, please keep us posted.
Please reach out.
But moving on, the question I'm asking after, going through a couple things at the expo is Disney getting into the upcycling business. Now, no, they are not, as far as we know, recycling any old Atari games and, making fashionable pieces out of them. But there is this new line coming out from Harveys that is going to take an actual piece of a retired Disneyland attraction and give it to put it as something that fans can actually take home. So if you're not familiar with Harveys, they are famous for creating like purses and handbags and bags in general from decommissioned seatbelts. And this line is going to have the actual decommissioned seatbelts from Soarin Over California. Do we have thoughts?
Well, I
Be honest, Jim.
I have always loved Soarin'. From the moment that show debuted at Disney's California Adventure in, February of 2001. In fact, I remember talking, with the gentleman who wrote Herd on the thing that, this isn't an attraction. This is a poem, a celebration of California. And, I even, I know so many people, hey, the Statue of Liberty's bent, so that they didn't like, soaring around the world. And to be honest, I'm hoping this trip I finally do get to experience the new Soaring Around America thing. So, I'm a fan of the show. I don't necessarily need a purse, but I kind of like this idea of recycling. I'm intrigued by the soaring belt buckle on the front of the thing. I don't remember the logo actually being
on the belt buckle?
Yeah, when I rode the attraction. But again, I was concentrating on the giant screen in front of me. But no, this is a cute idea, and I hope it connects with consumers.
Yeah, and I don't know in what capacity, but it says that Harveys has collaborated with Disney since 2011. But this one's different because it's taking the actual, seat belts that were used in the attraction. And I know that you're probably, this being a podcast, wondering, like, what could this possibly look like? But I would say that they look high-end, that there would be 2 small bags there's one in black and one in a camel color, and the Soarin' logo is on the metal clasp, and then what looks to be a wallet, and the crossbody does have the like a Soarin' strap that did not come from the ride. So this is being sold exclusively through the Walt Disney Company store, and if you're looking for that is going to be in Harveys. And this whole company started back with Dana Harvey and using leftover seatbelt material, from classic car restorations, and he made it into a handbag for his wife. And so Dana and his wife, Melanie Harvey, they will be there at the event as well, and they will be signing their Harveys merch that people purchase at the event. So pretty cool, but pretty questionable, but pretty cool. I can get behind it.
No. I again like this idea.
Yeah. So, but that led me to asking the bigger question that I started this with was, is Disney getting into the business of upcycling retired park materials? Because, probably a month ago at this time, we talked about how there's going to be the first ever Disney Experience auction at the expo, and the official name is Disney Experience Auction Rare and Remarkable Finds. And I feel like the Harveys booth is going to be next to where they're doing the auction. And I mean, it's like right in the center of the floor. So, I mean, do you think that these two things are connected, or I'm like, is Disney trying to come up with this new, line of business, or do you think that they were both just separate things and they're like, oh, okay, we'll kind of put these together?
Well, to be completely honest, the Disney company at one point literally had a website called Disney Auctions that, they were directly in this space. They were selling props, they were selling costumes, they were selling things out of the park because they were seeing what was happening on the secondary market. And by the way, one of the outfits they were watching was Heritage Auction. Long story short, Disney found out that the profit margins when you run your own auction site and you have to staff it and then have somebody who lists all of the things and writes all of the, the copy and that sort of thing. It's not quite as profitable as the mouse had hoped, and they stepped away from doing Disney auctions. And Heritage, on the other hand, is a dedicated staff that's been doing this for decades and is really good at it, and more to the point, knows all of the serious, Disney collectors on the planet and their needs and wants. So it's not really surprised that for the expo, Disney has decided to partner with Heritage Auction for this. But at the same time, the Harvey bag thing that you just talked about does put an interesting little spin on this story.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
The new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't undo your last hire. The human postponer. They were the master of one phrase. I'll circle back on that. But 3 months later, you are the one doing all their work and wondering how big that circle is. But LinkedIn Hiring Pro can take the hiring load off your plate by automating the hiring busy work from the initial job post to scheduling interviews. Hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
And I do have to clarify and say I understand before you send us emails that the auction is really not upcycling because they're selling them as, intact as they once were. But it's still kind of used stuff and, getting a second life. So I started just doing a little bit of Googling around this. And it looks like Disney has tried some things like this before as a part of their waste reduction and sustainability efforts. So you can tell me if you do this. I thought they were fascinating. In 2022, Disneyland Paris, they turned a tarp used during the Sleeping Beauty Castle refurbishment into 2,300 bags, briefcases, and pouches.
Okay.
What is this tarp? Like, what? I'm just picturing like an actual tarp, which I'm assuming is not the right.
Well, remember when, hard reality is people save for years to go to a Disney theme park. And, they want to get the family's picture taken in front of the castle.
Okay.
And when you're refurbishing the castle, it's like, oh, my family photos are ruined. So what Disney has begun doing is, literally printing the image of the castle on a tarp and, putting it up on scaffolding in front of the building while they work on the actual physical castle behind the tarp. So that's what kind of made this special, the notion of, it's the actual physical tarp that hid the castle. Yes, okay. I want one of the 2,300 bags, briefcases, and pouches.
That makes, as you started to say it, I was like, yes, that makes total sense. Mm-hmm. And then we had a couple others where in Tokyo Disney resorts, they had the Circulating Smiles collection where they repurposed cast member costumes into bags and accessories. And then, those were the two major ones, but you get the gist. So I like that they're bringing this stuff back and to live another life, and I think people appreciate them because they're unique.
Speaking of which, they're and I want to say it's a couple of years since they last did this, but Disney pin collectors will recall the set of pins that, you could buy a pin for, say, Space Mountain that had a piece of Space Mountain, that had been pulled out during the attraction's refurb at Disneyland. There was a whole set of those, to the effect of if you want to take home a physical piece of the park, you bought, one of the pins in that series.
Yes. Okay. So real quickly, just want to get to other couple pieces of merch that we're going to expect to see there. So 2 weeks ago, I think at this point, we had talked about Imagineering's new line coming out, fashion line, Yin said, and it's going to be a lifestyle brand. But I know that Mickey's of Glendale is at least what I look forward to most at shopping there. And so I just wanted to see what they were bringing to the table. Can you tell me anything, Jim, about Tom Morrow 2.0 that looks like a robot / penguin? I don't know. What is that?
Tom Morrow 2.0 was something that was introduced with Innoventions back in 1994 when they took the two Communicores at Epcot Center and effectively turned them into a Florida version of the Consumer Electronics Show for Las Vegas. Tom, for lack of a better term, was a minimatronic, an idealized puppet. But what was kind of interesting about Tom Morrow 2.0 is that he was also featured in a series of interstitials that ran on the Disney Channel. So if you were a Disney kid of the 1990s, you saw Tom Morrow when your family visited Epcot. You saw Tom Morrow when you turned on the Disney Channel, and we now jump ahead, 30 years, we're an adult. And, it's like, and we remember when, Tom would make an appearance in an Imagineer That, bit on the Disney Channel. So this is why they've decided to create this line of merch to celebrate the character.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And then it also makes sense that they're going to be celebrating the Muppets with everything that's going on right now. But the coolest thing I thought that went into their kind of new strategy of selling things to you in bits and pieces is there is a really cool customizable jacket. And then the people purchasing the jacket, there'll be pins and patches available through Mickey's of Glendale to customize your jacket, which I thought was really, really a clever idea.
Wow. Okay. And you buy the items yourself, and then, pins and patches, you put them on yourself, or you have them sewn on after the fact, or?
Well, I bet you Disney has had this line of patches, for probably a decade at this point, that you don't need, they're like iron-on situations. So maybe they'll have like a setup where you could customize your jacket right then and there. Which I think it's cool. And I'm not sure that the next part doesn't really go with them, but they're also selling these micro canvas tote bag charms, and they're being added as a blind box, which these are so weird. So do you know about the canvas bag trend?
I do not. That's the thing. When I turned 60, and given my terrible, terrible book collecting problem, I kind of decided, all right, the other collectibles, unless it is the sky opens up and a shaft of light comes out and I hear the voice of God, like, buy this, I don't buy things anymore. So, but that said, these are kind of cute.
They're cute. So I think that the trend started in New York City around the time, maybe like last fall, and people were just carrying like Whole Foods, like canvas totes, as like a purse or whatever. I guess they were stylish. And then earlier in the spring, Disney came out with their version. A friend of the show, Ashley, actually got me one from Animation, and it is amazing. Like one of my prized possessions. So then when I was at the park, I saw these as full size, not the Muppets, but the Pals. And so now you can have a mini canvas tote for your tote. They're celebrating Muppets. We're celebrating Duffy, which again, more of a deep cut, but rare. So I think that people will enjoy that. I know that is one of the queues that I would like to, the virtual queues that I'd like to get an invite into.
Okay. Okay, and speaking of which, we've talked at length on this podcast about Duffy, and we have some Duffy related stuff as well that's coming to the expo, right?
Yeah, and they're not your typical characters, just, Duffy. You're getting all of the friends, and then it's going to have the Imagineer that it's going to have a customizable lug bag with interchangeable straps and coin purses. So if you are into Duffy and Friends, make sure that you're making a stop there or checking out for this stuff. Checking out the stuff probably on eBay after the fact.
Okay. The Duffy phenomenon continues to fascinate me for, its popularity over at the Asia parks and also just how here in the States, it's, there's just an invisible wall that Duffy continues to run into.
Yeah, but I don't know about you, Jim, but just talking about this little bit of stuff and stuff we've covered over the last couple weeks, I am so excited to get out to California and experience it for ourselves. But we will keep you all posted as, the week goes on, and we'll recap what we see when we get back. But unfortunately, Jim, I think that will do it for today's episode of I Want That Too.
Oh, okay. Well, that said, though, just want to remind you folks that Lauren and Eric and I, in addition to Len Testa and Jim Schul and Drew Taylor, will all be on the ground there out in Anaheim. Mind you, I don't think I'm ever going to get out of the hotel room. I'm going to be the one who's actually keeping the podcast ship going forward here. But if you see us, come by, say hello. We always love to chat. And not going to lie, even though this is our gig, this is what we do, we're also excited to be there and looking forward to walking the floor and checking out all these exhibits and, also just trying to be strong and not buy too much stuff.
I know. I think we're traveling in carry-ons, so I might have to ship stuff home or take extra. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but I need to get going so I could get packed to hit the road soon.
All right. Well, on that note, folks, so again, we're wrapping up the podcast so we can go pack. So
yes. So closing up shop. So if you want to just keep up with everything happening across the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, make sure you're following us on social. We'll put some pictures out while we're out in California at the D23 Ultimate Fan Event.
Cool. Hey, by the way, if you want to keep up on everything that's happening across the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, please follow us on social.
Yep, and if you've got a question or idea for a future episode, or you want us to check out anything while we're out there, Jim's at jimhillmedia.com, and I'm at laurenhersey.com. And if you're not quite ready for the Disney conversation to end, be sure that you're checking out Jim Hill Media over on Patreon. Like I said, here pretty soon, if it hasn't dropped already, you're going to get a D23 prediction episode with Jim Schul, and Lynn. And over there is where you're going to find all your bonus content and even more on Disney history. But that does it for today's episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on I Want That Too.